The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Point Beyond webinar on this rather hot July day. My name is Ian Woodgate, and I'm very pleased to be talking to you this afternoon about no-code strategy and how to accelerate solution delivery. Before we start the webinar, just a couple of points to note. You may post questions to me. There's a panel on the right-hand side that you should see, so do feel free to post any questions that you may have, and I will answer those at the end. In addition, you should know that this is being recorded, and we will be sending out a link to the recording afterwards. So just to introduce myself quickly, my name's Ian Woodgate. I'm the Managing Director of Point Beyond. Point Beyond's SharePoint specialists. We particularly have a strong focus on using SharePoint as a platform for the delivery of business solutions. I've worked with SharePoint for over 10 years. I run the SharePoint UK user group for the south coast of England with meetings regularly in Southampton. I speak regularly at many SharePoint events around the UK and also around the world. And my background is very much in financial services. So, just to explain our agenda for today, I'm going to be talking for probably about 40-45 minutes. Quick introduction that we're going through now. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we mean by no-code solutions, then go on to talk about the need for solutions, what kind of solutions are we talking about delivering with a no-code approach, and what are some of the benefits that no-code can bring. But additionally, we're going to look at some of the challenges. And then I'm going to move on to a couple of demos and show you the art of kind of what's possible. And I've just picked out really a couple of solutions that I particularly like to work with that enable no-code solution delivery. And then obviously we'll wrap up and there's an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. So to start off with, let's just ask the question, what do we mean by no-code? And I like to start off with a bit of an analogy here. Building no-code solutions is kind of a bit like building a house in a way. If you're a builder, you don't normally go out and build your own bricks and fabricate your own baths and fit taps, etc., etc. You tend to buy those in as components and put them together rather than building everything from first principles and from scratch. You typically won't be building your own, baking your own roof tiles, making your own glass, so forth and so on. And so it really should be with the approach to delivering solutions. What we're saying with the no-code approach is you should be looking to take standard components that perform standard functions and put them together to build the solution that you need. How that might look in practice might be something like this. So this is a simple piece of extract from a simple workflow. And you can see here that it's very modular, it's very visual. We're building up our functionality of our solution using building blocks, not coding everything, not doing everything from the ground up. And workflow, of course, is just one of the components that would make up a no-code solution. On this next slide, I've highlighted some more of the building blocks. Obviously, if we're building a solution, we need somewhere to store our data or somewhere to store our documents. We also need pretty standard things like forms, like workflow, reporting, business intelligence, the ability to integrate with other systems, the ability perhaps to generate documents. We need a strong security framework. We need the ability to do things like alerting. And that everyone takes for granted these days that we need to be able to support mobile devices as well. So these are the kind of core components. These are the building blocks that we need to look for in order to achieve a no-code approach to delivering solutions. Let's look next at the need, what kind of solutions we're talking about, their choices for delivery and how to decide what approach to use. Because I want to make it clear, I'm not saying that no-code is always the right solution. It can work very well in a large amount of the time, but there will always be a need for other approaches as well. So let's look first of all at the kind of solutions that we're talking about. So we at Point Beyond have undertaken some research. We commissioned it independently, and it's revealed that for most organisations there's a considerable backlog of undelivered solutions that are awaiting delivery. And our research indicated that 68% of organisations who responded said that they had either a moderate or a serious backlog of solutions that they needed to get delivered. And these can take many forms. I've given some examples at the bottom of the screen here. It could be something as simple as tracking timesheets and expenses. Meeting room bookings is a very common one that we come across. Purchase order approval, facilities management, procurement processes, contract management. These are all very, very common solutions that organizations need. And why do they need them? They need them because they want to be able to perform more effectively, to be more efficient, to reduce process turnaround time, to increase customer satisfaction, to reduce the number of errors they make, and to be more accurate. And what's the alternative? What do we see a lot of organisations doing with these kind of processes? Well, very often they're relying very heavily on very manual processes. They're using email, they're using paper, they may be using Excel or Access. I see a lot of scenarios where people download a Word form, print it out, fill it out in ink, scan it back in and email it on to the next person in the process to manage. And these are very inefficient, very error-prone, very slow processes. So it's a demonstrable benefit if you can automate these and make them more efficient. So what else do we see here? We see that users are expecting very quick turnaround of these solutions, and there's a lot of pressure on IT to deliver these solutions quickly and to support a wide variety of different types of solutions. But we're not necessarily talking here about replacing custom software that you may already have. If you've got systems that work and work well for you, then it might be about integrating with those existing systems. So no-code approach is definitely not about throwing away everything that you've got already, but it may be about integrating with those existing systems in a more effective way. So let's move on now and talk about that in a little bit more detail, the kind of choices you've got to deliver the solutions that organizations need. The first choice is not to do it at all, to simply stay where you are, and to make do with your printing out Word documents and scanning them and filling them in. And if you've got a process that's only done once or twice every few months, then that might well be a perfectly acceptable approach. So don't do it all. Stay as you are is definitely viable in some particular circumstances. The next option, and this one happens a lot, is people go out and they tend to purchase point solutions. What I mean by a point solution is I mean an off-the-shelf solution that hopefully does, and I say hopefully because it doesn't always, hopefully does what you want. So, the customer services department says we need a new complaints tracking database. So they go and either commission it to be built, or they go and buy one off the shelf and plug it in. And then the IT department says, well, we need a change control system, so we'll go and purchase that. And what happens is departments go out, departments typically are budget holders, they go out and they just, in a relative isolation, purchase the point solutions that they need. One of the challenges of that, of course, is it leads to silos of information and systems that are discrete, that don't talk to each other. Perhaps data ends up being replicated across multiple different systems. A number of organizations I work with where, for example, there's no one definitive list of customers because the customers are stored in CRM and they're stored in another line of business system and another database and the contact system and who knows what else. So, point solutions have their place, but they're not always great. The next option is to configure components. So this is really the no-code approach. This is to take tools, building blocks that you can use to very quickly assemble a solution that you need using a no-code configuration-led approach. And that's obviously the main focus of this webinar today. And the last option is custom code. So going out and building your own bespoke solutions has the advantage, right, that you can kind of do whatever you like with custom code. But custom code projects are well known and have a reputation for being complex, for being slow, expensive, difficult, high risk activities. And anything that you can do to avoid that has to be a good thing. There's a line of thinking now really, which is that custom code has its place in that if you need to do something that differentiates what you do as a business and adds business value in that way, then custom code may be justified. But everything else the plumbing side of applications, the forms, the processes, the workflow, the reporting, the integration. These are standard functions. These are standard building blocks. And you shouldn't be coding the plumbing. You should be coding the things that differentiate, and only the things that differentiate, because that is what's going to add value to your business. Okay, so we've got some choices here for delivering solutions. Let's talk a little bit more about how do you actually decide which approach to take. So, as I've already mentioned, organizations typically have a backlog of applications. There may be pressure on the IT department to clear that quickly. They may have legacy applications that they need to support that are mission critical, perhaps that the business is quite happy with, but they need to be integrated with. There may be silos of information. We've talked about that in the previous slide, this idea that systems are commissioned in isolation. They perhaps use different underpinning technologies. They don't play nicely together and don't sit well and integrate particularly well. We may find that the user expectations are very high, and this can be a particular issue around things like UI design. Your users can be very, very particular about kind of how things look, and meeting those expectations can be a challenge. They may have expectations about how quickly things can be delivered. You know, this is just a form and a workflow. How come it's going to take you 6 weeks because you're custom coding it? That can be a consideration. And just the technical feasibility as well. So what I mean by technical feasibility is if you take an approach like no code, it's very good for delivering a lot of applications very quickly, but sometimes there are applications that you really don't want to go there with no code. And a great example would be something like a finance system. Finance systems are very complex, they're very mature, very well established products. You would be crazy to try and kind of build your own equivalent to Sage or some other some other financial system. It just wouldn't make sense. So what you may choose to do is you may choose to take a no-code approach to integrate with that system, whether it's Sage, JD Edwards or whatever, but you would be ill-advised to go out and create one from scratch. It doesn't make sense. So that's a great example of a point solution actually being a good idea. But for a lot of applications that organizations are screaming out for, we do find that no code can bring a lot of benefits. So let's look at some of those in more detail now. The first one, as I've already alluded to, is that actually building business applications using a no-code approach is far quicker, say, than custom coding. It's far lower cost and it's far lower risk. Now, certainly lower cost and lower risk than custom code, but I've also seen a lot of instances where it's actually been lower cost and lower risk than purchasing a point solution or an off-the-shelf solution. Off-the-shelf solutions are great if they do exactly what you want them to do, but all too often what happens is you get the solution in and you find actually that it doesn't do quite what you need it to do, and altering it or configuring it or customizing it to deliver what you actually really need as a business can be very difficult and very expensive. Of course, you're locked in with that vendor then, whereas if you've taken a component-led no-code approach, you've got a lot more flexibility to change the solution to meet your business needs, either initially or as they evolve over time. And I've covered that off with the kind of easier to change point here as well. But also, no-code approaches are more maintainable. If you need to make a change, it can be done relatively quickly. Somebody can go in, make that change, and you're done. If your underlying platform, for example, SharePoint or SQL Server or whatever, is upgraded, then if you're using components purchased from a specialist software vendor, then they are ultimately responsible for ensuring that that solution is going to work on that updated or upgraded platform. And you'll be in the same boat as a lot of people. If you've custom coded your own application, when it comes to upgrading, then you are going to have to manage that upgrade process and retest all of your own software yourselves. And that can be a tricky and quite long drawn out process. And the last thing to consider with no code is that you really don't need such specialist resources compared to custom development. So what typically happens with the custom development project is you get some developers in, they write their code and then they're done, they're on to another project, or if you've used an external resources, they're off onto another job, and that's the last you see of them. With a no-code approach, because you don't need such specialists, you don't need developers, you can very often find people in-house who are better able to support it ongoing. And a great example of that is a customer of ours, GBM Minerals Engineering, who've made use actually of Nintex workflows very extensively to automate their business, and that's been very efficient. And what we found is that the engineers there really kind of got Nintex very quickly, and were very quickly able to build and deliver the solutions that they need. And we kind of still support them, and they still get us in to help them with the really tricky bits. But the day-to-day creation and management of their processes and their applications, they do that themselves. So that's not to say that no-code necessarily means trivial, because it certainly doesn't. You need to have a certain mindset. You need to kind of be quite clear in terms of what you're trying to deliver and how, but you don't need to have the in-depth specialist knowledge of a software developer. So what I want to move on to now is kind of try to summarize with a graph how no-code approach delivers benefit for investment. And any of you who've been in any of my previous sessions might have seen this slide before, but I do quite like it. So what I'm showing here is how custom code compares to a no-code led approach. And let's talk about custom code solution first. So let's say we've got some applications that we want to deliver. We can make some investment setting up some development capability, getting some developers in, getting software licenses and so forth and so on. And then we can start to develop our applications. And so we track along this red line at the bottom, we're spending some money, and then after a while our development team, they start releasing things and they start delivering business benefit as we continue to invest, and we start tracking along the red line up here. And obviously more and more applications get delivered over time. Let's compare that to the no-code approach. So with a no-code approach, we're actually going to have to spend a bit more money up front, because not only do we have to set up our teams and so forth and our environments, but we also need to we probably need to invest some money in some tooling, some capability to be able to deliver solutions through configuration rather than custom code. So up front, we perhaps spent more money and we've ended up down here. But the joy of this is, of course, is that once we've got that capability in place, we can now start to deliver benefit much more quickly. So we start to track up the yellow line here. And the key, of course, to take away from this is that these lines always cross. And you're down here, when you start off down here, the custom code route can be tempting, because maybe for 1 or 2 applications, it's going to be cheaper. But by the time you start getting onto 3, 4, 5, 6 applications, if you're not very careful, you're going to be ending up here, and you're going to end up spending more money and get less good solutions than if you tracked up the yellow code and made that upfront investment in the capability to deliver solutions through no code. So I think this slide is beautiful in the way it highlights the benefit of no code, but there are some buts as well, and I want to go on and highlight some of those challenges now. So the first one really is that if you're going to take a no code approach, it really does require a strategic vision. You need to be thinking, how are we as an organization as a whole going to be delivering the solutions that we need, and not have things led independently by departments who are very often budget holders and going out and making decisions on a case-by-case basis. You need to also recognize that no code approach may increase your initial upfront costs as you invest in the tooling that you need to enable a no code approach to solution delivery. You need also to realize that no code is not always the right solution. As I said earlier, you'd be crazy to use no code to build, say, a finance application that replaced the likes of Sage or JD Edwards. But also, no code can't do everything. You may have a legacy database that's got no standard interfaces to, where you have no choice but to code the interface to that legacy system. And the last thing that we do see is that there may be internal resistance. See that in 2 areas particularly. Firstly, employees may just not be willing to compromise on their requirements, particularly around, as I've already said, user interfaces. Some business people can be very particular about how a solution looks, and no code enables you to deliver solutions quickly, but it does impose some constraints in terms of what you can do. With no code, you can do whatever. With custom code, you can do whatever you like. With no code, there are some constraints, and the business has to be prepared to accept and live within those constraints. And the other thing that we do see from sometimes, developers can be quite resistant to this approach because they're worried they're going to lose their jobs. That, by and large, in my experience, doesn't happen. What tends to happen is that the developers tend to actually get to grips with the tools and the capability, and actually they start to like and get a real buzz from being able to deliver business applications more quickly. Because most developers actually, certainly any good ones, the thing they enjoy the most is delivering successful working solutions and seeing their solutions used. So if you could give them the tools that enable them to do that more quickly, then they should be happier. Okay, so just to highlight some more of the challenges then. Getting strategic buy-in, persuading the organisation as a whole that then this needs to be tackled holistically and applications need to be delivered following a standard kind of strategic route and not piecemeal. That could be a big challenge. The next challenge I see is planning and prioritising possible projects. So we've done some engagements for some big organisations, and we've gone in and there have been over 40, I can think of one university where there was over 40 solutions that they urgently needed to be delivered. So with that kind of number, how do you actually plan and prioritise the projects that you could possibly deliver? And we've got some approach to doing that's worked very well, and be happy to talk to anyone offline if that's something you're more interested in. Thirdly, how do you choose the right tools? There's a whole raft of applications and possible solutions and kind of tooling out there, that you could use to undertake a no-code approach. How do you make sure that you choose the tooling that's right and best aligned to what your particular needs are? I've already talked about the fourth one. How do you overcome this kind of loss of ultimate flexibility, this kind of, well, with custom code I can make my UI look however I want, and I can make things work exactly the way I want, and how do I get my business to buy into the constraints that no-code tooling is going to possibly impose upon them? And the last thing, again, I've highlighted or touched on this previously as well, is that just because it's no code, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's trivial. You can build highly complex, highly capable solutions using a no-code approach, but you still need expertise in how to use those tools. You still need to have the right kind of mindset and the developer kind of mindset. You may need significant training to be able to deliver solutions effectively. So before we move on to the demo, I'm going to come back to my analogy of building a house, because it's not trivial. No code is not trivial, and building a house is not trivial. You still need to have a clear, well thought through design and understand what you're doing. And I really love this slide as an example, because you look at it first of all and you think, well, that looks quite reasonable, that's quite a nice looking house, what's wrong with that? And hopefully everyone has now spotted the problem with this is it wasn't at all well thought through design, because the drive has a huge lamppost right in the middle at the end of it. So just because it's no code doesn't mean it's trivial, doesn't mean you don't need to have a clear and well thought through design. So what I'm going to do now is just move on to a couple of demos, and choosing demos was quite a challenge, because really I could have demoed anything. I could have demoed workflow, we could have demoed custom forms, we could have demoed something like business intelligence, reporting, alerting, anything, SharePoint, you name it. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to choose two examples that were slightly more business focused. So the first one I've chosen is a tool that I really like, that we're increasingly working with, which is a product called EasyShare. And what EasyShare does is it allows you to basically deliver a fully functioning corporate intranet with nice branding without writing custom code. Because I've undertaken, and Point Beyond's undertaken a lot of intranet projects in the past, and I know intranet projects can be a challenge. They can be very long, drawn out and expensive affairs where business expectations are massively high and the requirements lists are huge, and then when it's delivered the business is almost like their thinking's moved on, they want more and more functionality, and they're big complex projects. That's what I'm trying to say, internet projects. And I like EasyShare because it shortcuts all of that. It says, you know what, you can have a great looking intranet and you can have it without having to have custom code. And the next demo I'm going to show you is dynamic document generation using a product that I really like as well, which is Chorus. And these are out of interest as well. Both of these demos that I'm going to show you are both on Office 365, so the hosted version of SharePoint from Microsoft. So let's flick over to EasyShare first of all. So what we've got here is we've got a SharePoint site, and all I've done is I've simply applied EasyShare to my SharePoint site. And straight away you can see it looks completely different from a SharePoint site. It's got some nice branding, it's got a nice look and feel, it's a fully responsive design, so it will work on mobile devices. We've got a lot of extra features and functionality that you kind of expect to see on an intranet, but which SharePoint doesn't come with. So just to quickly run through, we've got a kind of integrated search at the top here. I've got a nice menu navigation like this that I can configure very easily. We've got things like this carousel with rotating images. There's multiple page layouts, so you can have different styles of pages as well. We've got things like news aggregation here. See, I've got different types of news here. Things like a poll and quotes and a nice looking calendar and some links over here. Quote of the day, A to Z, highlighted person, and then the footer at the bottom here, which is all configurable. So it's very quick to put together. We can just, if I just click into another section, you can see a different site template. It's a slightly different example of look and feel. This is still built on SharePoint. If you need to extend it, create your own page layouts, drop in your own custom web parts, you can still do all that. So it's everything that you can do in SharePoint you can still do. Just go and look at some news, for example. Here we can go into some news, we can see our news stories, we've got the kind of functionality we'd expect. We can go and click on a news story. See that news in more detail. And there's a functionality as well. People can leave comments if they want to. We can see latest news, related news, or the kind of functionality that people would expect. And to be able to deliver an intranet without writing any custom code that looks as good as this, I think on SharePoint, I think is really compelling, and really kind of like working with this. Just to show you quickly how it works, I think I've got time to show you quickly how this works behind the scenes. So it comes with an administrative side to it as well. So if you're an administrator, you can come in here, you can do things like specify the navigation, the languages, the brands. Let me just show you brands as an example of how it works. So if you've got rights, you can come in here. Just wait for it to wake up. And you can see here we can create brands. If I go in and view, say, perhaps the default brand. And let me go back, I'll edit one of the other ones we've done, because the default one you can't change, so you can create other ones. Let's edit this one. So rather than having to wade through large amounts of CSS and deploy custom code, it's nice because you can just come in here and you can specify your colors that you want to use here. And then you can specify how you want the navigation to be colored. And it's all nicely laid out. So branding a site to be consistent with your own particular look and feel takes a few hours. And that could have taken a few days or weeks previously. And of course, if you want a completely different look and feel, you can still do that as well. It's still SharePoint under the bonnet. So I kind of like that. The next demo, the second one that I want to show, is a little product that works both with SharePoint Online and Office 365, which is Chorus, and it's document generation. So let's take a quick look at that now. So here I've got a very simple SharePoint site. It's not particularly glamorous, but it's SharePoint 2013. It's running in SharePoint Online. let me show you how it works first of all, and then I'll explain what's happening under the bonnet. So the idea simply here is we've got a list of requests for proposals, and we've got a document library here. And you could obviously enhance this with workflows and approvals and do more sophisticated reporting if you wanted to, but I want to show the principle of how the doc generation works here. So it's deliberately simple, but let's say I come in here and I say I want to create a new proposal, so I'll click on the new item button. Okay, so let's take a customer name. Let's say this is Acme products. And let's say that this is a request actually for some staff, and they're interested in permanent staff, and they say please supply packaging people. Financial experts. Maybe target start date. This is a proposal for resources, and please quote GBP. We save that. And what I've done is I've hooked this up to Chorus, so hopefully as I refresh my screen, what we'll see after a second or two is we've now created this. Hopefully you can see that the second document has appeared, Acme Products Proposal. We can click on that. We'll open our document. You can see what's happened is we've actually pulled through content from the list, and we've applied rules based on the fields in the list to dynamically generate our document. So we've pulled in the customer name, we've put in proposal for permanent resources, so we've done that. We said proposed service, please supply financial experts. We've got our start date, company profile, and we've also even pulled in content from other Word documents as well. So because I said this is for permanent staff, we've pulled in one set of terms and conditions of business. If it had been for temporary staff, we'd have pulled in another set of terms and conditions. So we're able to apply quite sophisticated and quite clever rules to deliver the document that we need. And if anyone's got any processes like that where you've got proposals to create or offer letters for employees or new starters to create, this can save a lot of time compared to what people typically do, which is they find the old one and they spend an hour or two hacking through it and trying to change it all around and make it right. This can really streamline those kind of processes and make them a lot quicker, and that's really why I like it. Got a couple of minutes. I will show you how it works again under the bonnet. So what we've got here, if I go to my site contents, is I've actually got a library called templates, Chorus templates, and you can see I've got my proposal template. I'll just go ahead and open that Word. So bring it onto the screen here. What I hope you can see is we've got these kind of placeholders here. So here's the customer name, staff type, and these are the fields that are being pulled through from my SharePoint list. And we've also got rules. So around terms and conditions, we've said this is the business rule. If it's permanent employees, then I want to show content from this document here. And if we're temporary employees, then I want to show the content from this document here. So all configurable easily here. So I get this extra tab in Word. I can go in here and click on data tabs. I can see the columns in my SharePoint list, and I can simply drag and drop those tags into the right place in my document. I can obviously do more clever things as well, like my business rules, where I'm saying if they're permanent staff, do this. If they're temporary staff, pull in a different document. So we've got that kind of thing, including Word content. We can do things like repeating sections. We can do things like dynamic styling, and so forth and so on. So really nice, no-code solution, works in Office 365 and on-premise, and really quickly delivers the ability to deliver document generation without having to try and code that yourself. And having been on some projects that have tried to custom code development of documents, I can tell you that that is not a trivial exercise. So that really concludes the demo. Just going to wrap up now with a couple of final slides. So let's go back to the deck. So I've talked today for about 35 minutes about no-code strategy. What do we mean by that? We mean using tools rather than code to deliver the solutions that businesses need. Why is it a good thing? It's a good thing because it's faster, it's lower risk, the solutions you deliver are easier to change and easier to support and maintain and upgrade when the time comes to upgrade. As I already said, try to limit custom code. The aim here is to try to limit custom code to functionality that differentiates what you do as a business. Everything else really is just plumbing, but there's no need to replace your line of business systems. What we really are looking at is trying to use these tools to integrate with our existing solutions where we want to keep them and to pull and push information to and from them. And I think the key takeaway really that I've highlighted a couple of times is that if you're going to take this, if you're interested in no-code approach, you really need to think about a more strategic approach. It's no good delivering solutions in a kind of department-led piecemeal fashion. It needs to be a strategic consensus that the approach is going to be taken, and the tooling needs to be adopted across the whole organisation. So I hope you found this webinar useful. I'm now going to take any questions that anyone may have, and if you've got any more questions afterwards, my contact information is on the screen. Please do feel free to give me a call. So thank you everyone for attending. Right, so we just have one question today, is that how is the Chorus Docs application licensed? Okay, so Chorus is licensed with Office 365. It's on a subscription basis. You pay a certain amount of money each month. If you want to have it on premise, then it's a perpetual license and you buy it much the same way that you would buy traditional software. What kind of prices? Let's take that offline. So the follow-up question is what prices are we looking at here? Let's take that offline. It really depends on how many users you've got and your precise usage scenario. Is it on-premise? Is it Office 365 and so forth? So let's get in touch after this call and I'd be happy to take you through that. Okay, I think we have no more questions, so hopefully everyone has found this to be a useful webinar, and thank you very much for your time and for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session. Thank you.